Success in Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry, Lutz. The date 3/11. It's Wednesday. It's no longer whatever it takes Wednesday because they can't do anything. It's what else can they do Wednesday? With us, Andrew Hoffman. Andy, God, it's
what they can do is destroy the world. I mean, the ECB has wrought this upon themselves first by going back, with the whole pigs bail-ins or bailouts way back when, and now this QE, which has destroyed the currency. It's ignited the currency wars. Now you have Janet Yellen, who's going to speak next week, FOMC meeting, just 2 weeks after she gave the most dovish statement ever, since she became the chairperson. And what has happened since? The dollar has exploded. The White House has made a statement saying they're worried about the strong dollar. The currencies of the world are collapsing. The oil collapse is renewed. The commodity collapse is renewed. Everything is falling apart. And Janet Yellen has to go up and give another statement next week about what her intentions are regarding interest rates.
How does she get up in the morning, Andy? And every day it's just more bad news. And you have to wonder, this woman who's basically going to oversee the collapse of the world, how do you do it?
Well, look, Bernanke thought that he'd survive. Actually, Bernanke did survive. Bernanke took on the job in 2006. I would have never thought he could survive without the collapse occurring. And I'm not going to blame him certainly for 2008 because that was on Maestro Greenspan's dime. But he somehow survived with the history's greatest money printing, market manipulation, and propaganda scheme to get through his 9 years without collapse. Well, Janet Yellen ain't surviving it, because now the money printing and market manipulation have been done as much as they possibly can be done. I mean, the ECB has literally destroyed Europe simply by saying it would do, as we said last week, whatever it takes to save it. and then you look across at what the Fed has to do. They're the what do they call it? The last line of defense. And of course, the Fed only reacts to falling markets. They couldn't care less if everyone's dead as long as the stock market goes up. And now that the stock market's not going up anymore, they're going to have to go into their own hyperinflation mode. And then you have Japan, which is hopelessly in hyperinflation mode, and the rest of the world, as their currencies are the equivalent of hyperinflation mode without printing anything because their currencies are collapsing so rapidly. And then the big kahuna of all, China, who today announced, we already know they're growing. They're not growing. They post their lowest growth rate in 25 years last month. Today, they had their biggest industrial production decline since the 2008 collapse. And trust me, everyone, if there's one thing you take out of this, people, it's the fact, aside from the mining industry going in, completely imploding, is the fact that the Chinese will be depegging the yuan. And when they do, it will be the biggest bang in the history of big bangs, because they are being destroyed by the exploding dollar, which, as I write, is almost at 100, the dollar index, just as much as the Swiss National Bank was swallowed up by the euro and had to abandon their peg. They will depeg the yuan, and when they do, and the yuan plummets against the dollar, you're going to see carnage, the currency wars, potentially the hot wars, and a surge in gold and silver demand as the Chinese people watch yuan price gold explode overnight.
And don't forget the HK dollar. That's going to have to depeg as well, because how can it not?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of it. I mean, everyone is pegged to all these currencies. There are 300 million people that use the euro in Europe, but there's another 250 million people who have currencies that are pegged to the euro. And as I spoke about in my audio blog this morning, and anyone whose fortunes are tied to the euro. I mean, look at the Great Britain pound. I mean, no country has wrought more havoc on the world than Britain over the years, and it's coming back to roost. But the pound is on the verge of breaking its own multi-year low. And in fact, if it breaks the 1.50 level, which has been support since the crisis, it'll go to that 142 level, which was its spike low in 2008. And then beyond that, it's the same hyperinflationary crisis. The Swiss franc is getting crushed against the dollar. And frankly, the Swiss franc they've lost all credibility forever over there. So again, I can't emphasize enough how much currencies are falling. And I predicted it. I said last year, I said the economy is going to collapse of the world. And all those people said, oh, the dollar is going to collapse. I said, it's not possible for the dollar to collapse against other currencies because it will be seen as the flight to liquidity, just as it was in 2008. And it's now, you can't even compare to, just like you can't compare the economies of 2008 to now, because they're so much better, so much worse now than they were then. The currency collapses are far worse now than they were at the worst of the 2008 collapse because of all the money that's been printed, because of all the lack of hope, the overcapacity that's been created in the world. There is no turning back. The euro is turning into the ruble right now. What do you think everything else is going to do?
I hate to be laughing. It's not funny, but what else can you do about it?
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, the bankers created all of this. The central bankers created all of this. It's the reason the euro should have never come around in the first place, but it never would have been allowed to come around in the first place if the bubble created by Greenspan and his cronies in the late 90s hadn't caused this false sense of the ability to do things that they couldn't, of allowing Greece to be financed by Germany, et cetera. And here we are today at the cusp of collapse. And if anyone, you occasionally get bashers that go, oh, well, Andy doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, what more do I have to say that I haven't said already? The fact that there's a cartel that is attempting to destroy gold, at the same time it's desperately trying to save stock prices and save oil prices and move around anything it can, doesn't change the fact that economic Mother Nature is having a way in a big way. And if you're in Europe today, I'm not talking about Zimbabwe, I'm talking about Europe, you are watching the German DAX stock index hit a new high as the 99% of the people that don't own the DAX are getting their purchasing power literally destroyed overnight. And 5,000-year lows in global bond yields. I mean, people are making money, well, not in Greek bonds right now, but in pretty much everything. Spanish bonds, Italian bonds, these countries are going bankrupt. They're going to all leave the euro also. I mean, the 1% are making money owning Spanish government bonds while the rest of the world, while the people of Spain are watching the euro being hyperinflated. And the scary thing is the ECB QE just started on Friday. And they even said, and if we don't get 2% inflation by September 2016, we'll extend it even further. Well, I got news for you. The way they calculate inflation, as they do the CPI here, there will never, ever be 2% inflation. Not until, of course, we have hyperinflation when all those calculations are moot.
Yeah, exactly so. And that's what it comes down to. They'll have to start ramping up the inflation definition. It'll lead to this absurd result where we'll actually have to make the inflation measure more accurate. So it appears that their program is actually working and inflation is going up.
Oh, they may change their methodology. They may sit and have more closed-door meetings and say, you know what? We have to actually pretend inflation's higher than it is.
Yeah. Because
this deflation, we've convinced the whole world deflation is the death. And since deflation is what's killing us right now, we'll have to just like we know that unemployment is killing us, so let's just lie about the employment rate. Well, they'll do the same thing. Well, if the current meme, as you say, is that deflation is the death, well, then they'll just change the statistics and say, no, it's inflation that's the problem. We need deflation. I mean, of course,
island of lies, right?
Yeah, I mean, they lose both ways. But I mean, when you said, let's call this, what can they do now Wednesday? I'm telling you, I've been saying this for years. It's Occam's razor. There's no group of people in the world. I mean, there's a group of people in America, there's a group of people in Europe, and a group of people in China. And yes, from time to time they have meetings. There's no grand plan here. These people are the people who happen to be in power, and they happen to be in power during a global Ponzi scheme, a fiat Ponzi scheme that started before they got there. And they wake up every day figuring out, how can I survive this day? That's what they do. And when you look at what's going on in Greece right now, Greece is just a perfect example. I mean, somehow that they have the German stock market going up. Do people see what's going on in Greece? The Greek people are laughing at them. Alexis Tsipras gave a speech today while this troika is deciding whether they should get emergency funding for Greek banks, saying, I want German war reparations from the World War II, from the Nazis, and we're going to confiscate German assets if you don't give it to us. And this while Germans are deciding whether they should give Greece money. And then you have this Yanis Varoufakis, the finance minister, say those corrupt bankers in Europe, They knew we were bankrupt in 2008. They knew we'd never pay off our debts, and yet they gave us credit anyway. And now we're really not going to pay off our debt. And yet people still believe that Greece is still going to be there. No, they're going to leave, and they're going to renege on their 400 billion euros of debt, most of which is to Germany and these very same people they hate. And the same thing's going to happen in Spain, and the same thing's going to happen in Portugal and Italy and France when Marine Le Pen wins the election in 2017, across the board. I mean, this is the maximum time of risk in the history of the 20th century and the 21st century. There's never been a more dire time for this world. Back to the Middle Ages.
It just amazes me that this is the all-time bottom for interest rates in the history of man. Isn't that shocking?
I mean, we're talking about we have the highest stock multiple on the S&P 500 ever. And this with the worst economic data that we've had. It's all, and I mean, they're actually, the consensus, this is Wall Street. Wall Street is now forecasting, this was before the dollar started surging in the last month or two. Wall Street is forecasting lower S&P 500 revenues this year. That hasn't happened since the crash. And yet we're trading at a record high multiple on stocks. And supported by record stock buybacks of bankrupt companies who are borrowing money at the Fed's free window. I mean, you can't think of
this stuff up.
Yeah, and then you have record low interest rates with record high debts and a record low outlook for paying off those debts. And of course, then you have what's going on in gold, where you have literally the industry being destroyed by a cartel that is, as I said this morning, killed its golden goose. Because supply is already short and demand is already at a record level. And now, as I have predicted, as loudly as anyone after working in the industry for 5 years, for 4 years, I've said there is nothing more dangerous than mining stocks. I didn't say that they can't go up. I said they are the most dangerous things ever because it's a difficult business to start with. And this cartel, unlike the OPEC cartel, is out there to destroy the price of gold. And they certainly have. And I said 2 years ago the junior mining industry would be dead. It's dead. There is nothing left. There's been no discoveries. There's no cash left. Allied Nevada, which was a big producer, just reported bankruptcy yesterday. And if you look at the Huey index, the big companies are multi-decade lows. Some of them, I think, are on the verge of bankruptcy right now. And as I wrote this morning, you're going to see, despite the egos, Barrick and Newmont are going to merge. I would guess any day now. They've talked about it for 2 years. They have to merge because they're both in the line of fire. And when they do, you're going to see a paralysis of the industry that makes the oil industry paralysis of 1999 and 2000, when oil briefly went down to $10 a barrel, look like nothing. I've seen forecasts now that gold production is going to be down by 15% in the next 5 or 7 years. For silver, especially if the base metal prices keep weakening, which I think they will, I think it's a given, you're going to see even bigger production declines. And again, as currencies are declining and the demand for real money increases, absolute cataclysm in the mining industry like nothing we've ever seen before.
It's just shocking that things could have gotten like this. And I think we're at the point now where there just is no turning back here. There's no getting out of this thing unless somebody went to sound money overnight and just wrote off all their debts. And that's not going to happen.
Well, there's the difference between writing off your debts and going to sound money. I mean, there will be debt write-offs overnight. That's what Greece is going to do. Yeah. I mean, they're all going to do it.
You have to do both, though. You can't just do one. And that's the end of the banks. And that's what we need. We need the purging of the banks.
By de facto, the thing is, Greece will have its drachma, which will be worthless overnight. But again, we talked about you have to kill it to save it. And, it makes no sense when you're talking about a Vietnamese village. But when it comes to Greece, yes. I mean, they're at rock bottom already. It's not like, when Scotland had its vote, its secession vote, and then you had the Save Our Swiss Gold vote, and those failed. They did it because the bankers scared the people and said, if you vote to have a gold standard in Switzerland, or if you vote to secede from England, from the UK, the stock market's going to crash. And so the people who vote, who are typically the more affluent people, like, I know it's probably the right thing, but I don't want the stock market to crash. Whether it would or not, it's another story. But the thing is, you can't scare the Greeks. The Greeks are at rock bottom low. Their stock market,
they got nothing to lose.
They have nothing to lose and everything to gain, including their dignity. And that's why, of course, they're going to Grexit. And anyone who says otherwise is insane, because all they're doing is you talk about, it's like, it would be like the Germans taking water and trying to fill the Titanic with buckets of water. We're at the point now that there's no way Greece survives this year. I can't believe they'll make it through the 4-month extension period before all hell breaks loose. And again, there's so much tied to that euro. People don't realize, especially, I see the Dow up 30 points as the PPT is desperately trying to, mask reality. People have no idea what the euro, which is the second largest currency in the world, plummeting like that does. And it's not just the euro, it's every currency. It's the Japanese yen, it's the Brazilian real, it's the Turkish lira, South African rand, across the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar.
Everything is plunging.
Destroyed, and it's all because of the printed money. And how will they try to fix it? By doing it whatever it takes. Janet Yellen will print money. As soon as they lose control of the stock market, she'll be out in full force. Oh yeah, there's too much inflation. We need QE4, and the same, and Abenomics will increase it. And of course, you have China lurking out there, with their QE coming, and of course that depeg somewhere in the future. And it won't work. It just won't work. They will hyperinflate, or it'll just completely fail and everything will collapse. And either way, the only thing you can count on that's going to hold its value is going to be the real money, that is gold and silver, especially now that the cartel has guaranteed peak gold. I mean, I wrote last week of peak gold. This is no joke, because not only is it peak gold because of the current fundamentals, but once this happens and gold finally breaks out in dollars the way it has in all the other currencies, the governments will nationalize and windfall profit tax everything. They'll never, ever see production rise again. It's like Venezuela. When I was in the oil industry back in like 2001 or something, when Venezuela nationalized PDVSA, their oil company, and they said, "Oh, well, we're so smart. We have great engineers. We don't need Exxon, all them." Well, guess what happened to Venezuelan production? It plunged into oblivion, and Venezuela is on the verge of imploding as a country. And a big part of it was that stupid decision to nationalize and kick out the foreigners who knew how to actually explore for oil.
Yeah, well, that's been done before, always with similar results, right?
Yeah, I mean, and nothing is more valuable as more of a political hotspot than gold and silver. You can't even compare oil to it. I mean, yes, oil is important from a revenue standpoint, but when you're talking about monetary crisis, the first thing they'll do is they'll take any mine that's out there. I mean, are you kidding me? And they won't be able to produce it. They'll screw it up, but they'll just nationalize it and say it's national security.
Yep, exactly.
In fact, Venezuela did that too, and look where they stand right now.
And never a good idea. We've seen it over and over again, but it just never. They never learned. They just never learn, and the mining sector is really susceptible to it, and it just keeps happening over and over again. And hey, what are you going to do?
But again, what I can't emphasize enough, all these things that happen over and over again, it's almost incomparable. You can't even compare anything to where we stand right now. We're in the midst of the greatest money printing fraud of all time at its end, its very end. I've said it all along. When you see currencies crashing and debt exploding parabolically, it's the end. I don't care if they got the Dow up to a record high. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change what economic Mother Nature is doing. There's massive overcapacity of everything because of all the money printing. There's massively overvalued financial markets everywhere. And of course, you have this situation where the only real money is going to be an even shorter supply than it ever was before.
Yeah, well, it's classic malinvestment, and malinvestment on steroids, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's comparable in history. And that's why, I mean, I say, the time is dark for us quote, gold bugs. Not that I'm looking forward to what's coming ahead, but again, you talk about trapped rats. This is the ultimate of trapped rats. This is truly the rats on the Titanic, as the Titanic has nothing but the tip still out of the water. And so they are just doing, as you say, everything they can I mean, I'm sitting here watching the PPT desperately trying to keep the Dow from going negative today. After the last 2 or 3 days, remember, you got Janet Yellen speaking. Can you imagine if the Dow falls another 300 or 500 points after what we've seen this week and oil keeps falling with Janet Yellen? I mean, she gave, as I said, the most unequivocally dovish FOMC statement in memory just 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah. So again, they are so desperate to make things look okay so that Janet Yellen can say, yeah, we're still bullish about the economy, but it just doesn't jive with reality. And eventually that Yellen reversal's coming.
Yeah, it has to, because what choice did they have, Andy?
None.
Right. I mean, are they going to let the dollar index go to 200?
They have no choice of that. I mean, that's the beauty of economic Mother Nature. Yeah, it's easy to make the silver market fall 30 cents an ounce in 5 minutes at the open of the COMEX, but oil's too big. And that's I've been screaming. I mean, I have been screaming. No one knows about market manipulation more than me. Watching what I call the oil PPT for 4 weeks in a row. You could see they were like, we're not letting it go under $50, and it was just such a joke as the numbers, the inventory just built and production built, and the economy's falling apart. And every time these numbers would come out, they would push it back to $50 a barrel. Well, today you had another, record oil production number came out by the EIA, and a bigger than expected build. And they tried their same games, and look at this. Oil's back to $47.50. As I said it would, as I wrote in supply response, as I wrote in crashing oil prices portend unspeakable horrors, as I wrote in that other Achilles heel, that this oil price falling oil prices is just as dangerous to the powers that be as rising gold and silver prices. And they're losing. The difference is that gold is so much more manipulatable because it's smaller. Oil is just huge. They've almost filled up the Cushing. They're projecting that the Cushing storage facility in Oklahoma will be full in June. And, people emailing me talking about tankers sitting in the Gulf of Mexico with nowhere to go, the old-time old Baltic Dry Index. There's just too much oil out there to fake it by printing money and buying crude oil futures and buying the USO oil fund. And that's how they're going to lose this game. Economic Mother Nature is too big for them. Look at the currencies. You think they wanted the euro to fall like this? The White House is terrified of it. Everyone is terrified of it. They can't beat these forces of nature.
Oh, there's no putting this toothpaste back in the tube. Can't be done. And that's basically the same thing with the world economy. Too much liquidity for too long. I mean, we're talking for a generation here. Anyway, Andy, got to go. Find Andy's work along with his esteemed colleague Bill Halters over at milesfranklin.com. Subscribe to their daily missives and to I guess what is now Andy's daily audio blog. And
not daily, but at least one a week.
One a week anyway. And while you're at it, come over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you check out the website. Stefan just does an incredible job. He gets articles from places that you just can't believe, as well as getting Andy and Bill's work on the site a number of times a week. You just have to stay up on this now. If you don't, it's going to be too late. And while you're at it, make sure you sign up on the mailing list. Got a couple of great webinars coming up really soon. Andy, next Wednesday, and it might be What the Heck Are We Going to Do Wednesday come around next week, right?
I can't even imagine how much can happen in 1 week at this point.
All right. Till then.
Take it easy.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.